Welcome back. It's Foster the Podcast, episode 5. I'm your host, Foster the Prankster. Thank you for joining us once again. I hope everybody had a great first week of 2024. We're off to a crazy start already. There's a lot of stuff to get to today. Before we get into the stories, I just want to take a second to thank everybody who's been supporting, not just on social media with the engagement and everything, but when I decided I was going to do a show, I had a lot of people, in my creative circle who kind of came together and really helped me out. So as you can see, as we're getting everything a little bit more, produced and a little bit more professional looking, I want to shout out Prolific, who produced my whole album, Merry Prankster, but also is responsible for the intro music. My man Woodson on the new logo at the beginning of the show, which looks dope. And then, I had people, the Mac that we're recording the show on was donated by a close friend. The lighting was donated by a professional photographer. So a lot of people kind of came together to help me make this show kind of come to fruition. And it's dope to see it start to, look and feel a little bit more like a real production. So thank y'all for that. Let's get into the stories this week, man. So real quick, we'll do a sort of update on some of last week's stuff. The Epstein files actually, ended up being released, I guess, and it's not really, again, it was sort of a nothing burger like we talked about last week. A lot of the names that are on this have been known associates for many years. They're talking about, people are like, whoa, it's Bill Clinton. And it's like, yeah, you not seen the photos of Ghislaine Maxwell at Chelsea Clinton's wedding? And so it's kind of bizarre to see people, maybe a lot of these people didn't know this stuff, but this stuff it's been out for years already. There was really nothing new. And apparently there's going to be more to come in this sort of drip fed fashion. They're going to just kind of keep sprinkling things, which, again, I don't really, it seems a little shady to me. Seems like it's sort of a distraction. And, what I talked about on last week's show was how it was kind of this thing of normalizing or getting people comfortable with the idea that this stuff goes on. And when I saw a lot of the responses to these documents being unsealed, apparently Stephen Hawking was listed as one of the people. And so a lot of people thought that this was hilarious, what was he doing there? He's in a wheelchair. He can't molest kids. It just kind of confirms my suspicions. This isn't a laughing matter, in my opinion. This is a disgusting, this is one of the most blatant, corruption stories in any of our lifetimes. I mean, the implications of this are so vast, and the way that the media, even in the face of these documents being unsealed, exactly like I said, the way that they're downplaying, associates doesn't mean that they did anything, and we can't hold everyone, it's just this scapegoating, and this denial that anything weird might be going on. So yeah, man, the Epstein stuff, again, I don't ever think that there's going to be justice. I think that this is sort of a provocation and a carrot that they're just dangling in front of people. Moving on to the ballot situation that we talked about last week, that seems like it's kind of kicked up a notch. Real quick, we got an article here. Illinois and Massachusetts voters seek to take Trump off 2024 ballot. And this article goes on to talk about how, groups of voters from Illinois and Massachusetts on Thursday filed motions to remove Donald Trump from 2024 ballot, adding to the list of states where the former president faces a challenge to his candidacy under the 14th Amendment, so-called insurrectionist ban. Goes back to what we were talking about last week of just the provocation, the whole idea that, happy January 6th to everybody. Happy almost insurrection, almost overthrowing the government anniversary. You guys, we almost had them, right? We almost had them. It was close. But yeah, man, the January 6th, the insurrection narrative is, the way that it was astroturfed. I was home during the live coverage. I watched it happen from my living room, and know people who were affected by the subsequent law enforcement, the way that they've been going after people that were just there, like didn't do anything violent, just happened to be there. It feeds back into this idea that they are provoking people, that they wanted to establish a pretext for casting large swaths of patriotic-minded Americans as domestic terrorists, and to sort of paint Trump as this like anti-hero that that he was like kind of leading the charge to take back the country or something like this, which I don't believe. I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a left-right Republican Democrat guy. So I'm just trying to look at this objectively from what I see and what I saw on the day. And what I saw on the day was not a coup. It was not an insurrection. A bunch of people were walking around, looked like they didn't really know where they were. The doors were open by police. If you watched it, you saw that it was like, is this like a bad reality TV show? Like, what am I watching here? Like, this is it wasn't what they've made it to be since the incident took place. And we're gonna roll that over into the story about the Babbit family. Ashley Babbit was one of the participants in the January 6th storming or entering of the Capitol building. And so her family is seeking a $30 million lawsuit from the U.S. government for wrongful death. Now, this is where I'm gonna sort of deviate from where most people probably would expect me to go with this. And this is sort of the play stupid games, win stupid prizes portion of the episode. Again, this is like with the George Floyd thing that I got into. This is not in any way saying that Ashley Babbit deserves to die or, anything like this. But I think, people are going to start finding out more and more the hard way that protest means nothing in the face of an authoritarian government. It means nothing. It's not, again, I keep going back to this, things we talked about already, but it's a pressure release valve. It's a way for you to do something, to partake in a toothless demonstration that really has no power to affect change. And if you believe that your government has been corrupted to the point that you need to like physically fight back or like storm a building or something like this, you either need to get real strategic and be building, be in some sort of organization that is willing to take it to that level. And I'm not either condoning or, dismissing that. Or you need to learn to dodge bullets. You need to learn to dodge bullets because you can't expect to fight tyranny without a few shots being fired your way, literally and figuratively. They're not just to give up power. So I don't understand why, I told people at the time, I told people that this was a bad idea to begin with. And the January 6th, the organization that sort of, that organized the protest or the gathering, you have to file permits for these things. It was a known thing that people were going to be going to DC on January 6th before it happened. So this idea that they just kind of overran the security and that, they had no idea, they were caught off guard. Come on, man. I don't buy it. It's nonsense. But I've been saying for a long time that protest culture, it gets you jammed up. These are honeypots. They want you out there so that when a situation goes down, they can target you. They have facial recognition cameras monitoring these things. The surveillance is out of control. They got communication jammers. There's all types of different things. And I say this, a lot of people I say this as somebody who participated in Occupy Wall Street. That was where I kind of started to see the co-opting and the how do I say, the nature of just the hamster wheel that protest culture has created. And I wrote a record about this called Wood-Stockholm Syndrome in 2017 that basically was an indictment of the hippie generation. And, you know, we're sort of living through the echoes of this romanticized 1960s civil rights protest culture that was sold to us. You know, that's why it's Wood-Stockholm Syndrome, because Woodstock, the 1969 hippie music festival, is sort of like the culmination of the counterculture movement to a lot of people in that generation. But it kept us on this cycle of begging the government for you know, acknowledgement of our grievances and feeling like we were changing the world and like we were doing something. And meanwhile, you're on a treadmill. You're not making any progress. You're getting high off of the feeling of being involved in something. And so, yeah, you know, with this Ashley Babbit thing, you know, it's unfortunate, man. It really is. But at the same time, you know, you really you had no business being in there. And again, if you were gonna go in there, you should have had a little bit more mental, you know, foresight to be able to understand the risk of what you were doing and the ripple effects that might be caused by this. So in other mess around and find out type news, we're going to go to this story about the guy who tackled the judge in the courtroom this past week. This has been making its rounds. Let's check out this video real quick.
Nevada man is due back in court today after this.
Yeah. So...
Oh my God. The Clark County judge that you saw there had just denied the man's request.
So the judge had denied the bail and basically sentenced this guy to remain in custody. You know, this is just like a little sidebar. I did think that this was kind of funny. If you've faced any, you know, serious like legal charges and you've ever been in a courtroom in front of a judge, they can definitely be very disrespectful and elitist in the tone and the way that they talk to you. And it, you know, it goes kind of with the whole Capitol thing. It goes to this idea of these political figures and these sort of elite figures thinking that they can't be touched, that they're above, you know, getting hands put on them. So in that regard, you know, I kind of had to chuckle at it, but at the same time, you know, this is just foolish and self-destructive, man. Like you're not gonna, this isn't gonna help your situation, unfortunately, you know. And the guy was already in there for, you know, was already locked up for assault and battery related charges. So this is just, you know, another one of those instances of poor impulse control and, you know, not being, you know, acting out of emotion. And, you know, a lot of the internet scholars, again, are, you know, trying to uplift criminality and saying that, oh, it's the trauma of the incarceration and he's a victim and he lashed out because of, and it's like, none of that matters. Like, again, the excuses don't matter. It's about, you know, accountability. He made a choice. He snapped and he ran up and put his hands on somebody. You know, that's part of the system, and, you know, it's never going to fly. So, I just wanted to like quickly touch on that because I thought it was an interesting little story there. We'll move on to Philly. Philly is crazy. There was a situation where there was an altercation on the SEPTA, which is like their public transit, the SEPTA station. Let's play this clip here, and a guy who ended up dying after being pushed onto the train tracks. You know, it's a crazy story.
New video sent to NBC 10 by a law enforcement source shows two men arguing at the subway stop at 34th and Market this afternoon. They tussled with each other, as you can hear one guy demanding something from the other. Then all of a sudden, one man unloaded two punches and knocked the guy onto the tracks. A train came by just seconds later. and ran him over.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had no idea.
SEPTA riders learned what happened as they tried to get home tonight. The area.
Yeah, so again, man, it's a really unfortunate incident. And I do wish that there was more context. A lot of people are instantly on the side of the guy who, seemingly defended himself and, hit this dude. And, it appears accidental, the fall. It didn't appear based on the positioning of their bodies that the smaller guy had enough leverage to intentionally push the guy onto the tracks. It kind of looked like they were stumbling over each other. So in that aspect, it's unfortunate. And I do think it's sort of an accidental or, circumstantial thing. But like I said, I do wish that there was more context. I wish that the video had started earlier, because you do hear the guy, asking him to give him something or something about a lighter. And so, I was saying, like, on Twitter, like, if this guy pickpocketed him, or, it's sort of like he had reason to believe that this guy had taken something from him, I could understand why he confronted him in that manner. And that would change my opinion on the fact that the guy swung on him and that he ended up dying. But I think it's interesting. A lot of people are also citing the analogy between this case, or the similarity, I should say, between this case and the Daniel Penny incident. If you recall, on the New York City subway, there was an individual, a white individual, Daniel Penny, was a former veteran and things like that. He subdued a black guy on the subway who apparently was mentally unstable and was threatening people, and resulted in choking the guy out and the guy dying. And he was criminally charged. And I guess, a lot of people were upset, saying, it was self-defense and he was trying to protect people and whatever. And then on the flip side, a lot of people saying, well, this is the same issue, but it's reversed, where a black guy is defending himself against a white guy, results in the white guy dying, and they want to, like, throw the book at this black guy for for assaulting him and causing his death. Obviously, neither one of these instances is, neither one of the situations is ideal. They're both terrible. But I think, you always have to look at the big picture. You always have to, understand that you're not getting the whole story from the 10-second video that we're seeing. So, it sucks, man. Definitely my heart goes out to the family of, this guy. And definitely don't think that deserved to happen to him. But you always have to be mindful of the way that public altercations can go and how quickly things can escalate. You can punch somebody and they fall and hit their head on a curb or something like that, and that now they're brain dead, and you're on trial for a way bigger charge than just a punch in the face. So just be careful, man. Try to de-escalate things as much as possible. Try to de-escalate situations and get out of there without being forced into physical violence. Let's get to this next story. Is sort of I'm a little bit invested in this one, just because it's you guys have heard me talk about this before, but the Elijah McClain, the officer that was responsible for the death of Elijah McClain, has been sentenced to 14 months in prison, in prison. So, sorry, I'm pulling this article up. This is one of those things, man, that really upsets me, because Elijah McClain was one of those guys. I talked about this in the Ski Mask episode, about the way that we, in the black community, engage with these police killings, and how people like, the cases like George Floyd will get, uplifted, and people are burning down buildings for a guy who, in my opinion, his character did not warrant that level of outrage. And then meanwhile, you have a kid like Elijah McClain, man, this autistic black kid who's coming back from the store, and just due to the nature of his neurodivergence and his inability to really like communicate and respond to officers in expected, in an expected manner, he lost his life. And I haven't forgotten that video since I saw it, him saying, I'm just different. This one actually gets me emotional, man. And it really does upset and frustrate me that y'all ain't going up for this boy like you did for George Floyd. I don't see y'all. Nope. Not the outrage ain't even a fraction. It's not even a fraction of what y'all was doing for a criminal who robbed a pregnant woman at gunpoint. That was y'all hero. But Elijah McClain, this young autistic black kid is dead, and nobody cares, man. It's not. It ain't even really a big story right now. 14 months with probation for this officer. Crazy. R.I.P. to Elijah McClain, man. Such a tragic story. You can't overstate it. Like I said, man, that one really hurts my heart, and prayers up for his family. But we're gonna move on to a little bit of I guess this would be categorized under our destabilization sort of news. A lot of nonprofits and municipal governments are apparently establishing safe lots, which are like basically parking lots for people who are living in their cars, because so many Americans are now living in their cars, are essentially homeless. And if you've ever driven across the country, taking a long road trip, a lot of people know that I, have done a few of those over the past few years. And if you've ever done that, you're aware that like it can be sketchy to park in certain places. It can be illegal to park in certain places. You can get towed, you can this, and even, at night sleeping in your car, it can just be dangerous from a physical standpoint of having people, mess with you or whatever. But this is like one of those things where, as we talked about with the migrant crisis and things like this, where the expectation of standard of living and quality of life in the U.S. is going to be reduced. And this is one of the things that I've been talking about for a while, at least since COVID, was this idea that this economic environment is being created to sort of drive down the expectation and to make America more like a third world country. So I think that, this stuff, it's important to keep an eye on because it's an indicator of the social conditions that, the how quickly they're deteriorating in the country. The fact that we need to, create safe parking lots for people to sleep in their cars. It's crazy, man, that this is where we are. And so for today, lastly, we're going to get into a little bit of contentious territory here. I have been openly critical of podcaster Brett Weinstein. I used to watch Brett's show. A lot of y'all might remember in the first episode of this podcast, I specifically called out Brett for his views espousing a genetic Jewish supremacy, let's say, this idea that the Jewish people are genetically superior to everyone else and more inherently more intelligent than everyone else. And I've also been super vocal about my issues with his coverage of the COVID response. And it seems like some people are starting to catch up with that. This account on Twitter, Jessica Hockett, I don't know her. I don't know who she is or whatever, but she recently posted this clip of Brett on somebody's show. I guess this is Michael Schellenberger, who was a reporter, and just kind of going over like some of the things that Brett was on the side of the regime to which he's now trying to sort of backpedal. So let's
lockdowns. I think I got right, which was there was a place for lockdowns, but they needed to be more intense than they were. They needed to be short duration, and they needed to be paired with excellent quality testing, which frankly we still don't have.
Right.
which I don't know. I can't imagine why we don't have it. I think
Right.
it's a problem money would solve, and the fact that we haven't dedicated enough money to have tests that are worth anything is conspicuous to me. But
Yeah.
I would have had, let's say, a, yes, painful 6-week, very intense lockdown. And the reason for that is that gives it enough time. Most of the transmission was at home. So 6 weeks gives it enough time to burn through, places where we are corralled together, such that at the point you lift that 6-week mandate, you have a small number of places where active COVID still exists. And if you had good testing, you could figure out where they were, and you could apply some very local solutions so that the rest of us could have gone back to life. Given that we never had good tests, I would not favor that plan.
So that's enough. Nah, man. Nah, you don't, after espousing views like that, you don't get to jump back on our side. You don't get to, Brett's been on like a campaign to sort of rehabilitate his position and rewrite history in a sense and make it seem like he was on the right side of this thing from the beginning. And, you hear him in this clip, and this is from 2022, I believe. August 4th of 2022. So not that long ago, over 2 years after the beginning of this whole mess, and you're still advocating lockdowns 2 years after, knowing the deleterious, detrimental effects on the economy, on kids' cognitive development, on all the stuff that we've already talked about. And, there's this hierarchy already within the alternative media and podcasting audience where it sort of leads to excuses being made by the audience for these, their favorite cult leader or content creator, if you want to call it. It's not objective discourse and holding people accountable for their inconsistency or their hypocritical stances. And, I don't know if this show will ever get, a big following, but I know that I'm not in it for that. I don't want to be one of these guys that's like, people are just like, oh, you're a genius, you're the GOAT, you're this, you're that. I'm just doing this to have a conversation. I'm talking to y'all the way that I would talk about these issues with any of, my friends that we're having intellectual and philosophical conversations with. I'm not here to be on a pedestal and like talk down to people or tell them that I'm right and, sort of couch my opinions in this like authoritative whatever. Like, nah, man, like we all here together. We're all trying to we all got different pieces to the puzzle, and we're all trying to come together and contribute what we can so that the big picture can be seen. That's my interpretation of what this space should be as far as the internet and podcasting. That's kind of why I named this show Foster the Podcast, because it's about this idea of fostering the open dialogue that the medium of podcasting has sort of brought to a lot of people. And so, like I said, Brett has been attempting to rewrite his position on COVID, even though he supported the regime pretty much every step of the way by rationalizing it. Now that the tides have turned and the Overton window has shifted due to the realization of the harm that was done, and the fact that a lot of this stuff ended up being lies, people like Brett now want to take credit for like being the voices of reason and getting things right, even if at the time they were wrong and were complicit, until it became convenient to be vocally skeptical, until it became accepted to be challenging the narrative and say like, no, this is something bigger is going on here than just, oops, like, oh, we didn't know, like, and so I think, he's sort of a symptom of the same thing that led to the ability to pull off something like COVID, the intellectual elitism. These people tried to flex expertise and authority on their audiences just the same way that the people they criticize, the same way that Fauci was doing, the same way that Rochelle Walensky, the head of the CDC, was doing, trying to flex this idea of like expertise and elite intellectual knowledge. And so those of us in the working class who were vocally opposed to this stuff just in the beginning based off of pure observation of what we were being told and what we were seeing in the real world. A lot of us were just going off of that initially, like the math ain't mathin'. This doesn't add up. And we were socially ostracized. We were cast out. We lost jobs. We lost friends. We lost, family members that wouldn't talk to us. We lost things. There were tangible, things and relationships that were destroyed based on our ability and foresight in seeing what was going on. We were told that we weren't intellectually capable of doing our own research. We were told that we were crazy. We were told that the pandemic simulations that had taken place, like Agenda 21 prior to the actual pandemic lockdowns of 2020, we were told that those were coincidences, that, the World Economic Forum and all these different people saying, oh, that's a coincidence. You're reading too much into it. They don't have any power. They're not the government. They can't do anything. And, we were told that nothing nefarious was going on. This was all incompetence. It was just, people were afraid, and it's all just a big mistake. It was, oops, we didn't try to do anything wrong. It just sort of happened. And that, that never shook out. There was never any legitimate evidence that was the case. And I think this speaks to the divide between the working class and academia, which we're now seeing with this Harvard scandal, with the plagiarism thing coming out, with, Claudine Gay being forced to step down from Harvard as the president. It's this revealing the curtain is being lifted, and the academics have shown themselves to be ideologically and intellectually captured by their own hubris. They believe their own hype way too much. And, many of them have shown that they lack the discernment to know when they're being lied to and when the data and all of these different things are being skewed for an agenda. And for that reason, I just don't believe that they can ever be trusted. I really don't. Even now, when these people admit they were wrong, I think they will easily be mobilized again against the conspiracy theorist types as soon as another manufactured crisis comes into focus. Authoritarianism often comes at you from both sides, and that's why I take none. I try to just sit right in the middle and observe what's going on, because like we talked about with they want to provide stimuli to push you one way or the other so that you're not able to objectively analyze what you're seeing, and you're going to go off of this party bias or, authoritative bias of, who the source is that's telling you and how much you trust that source. I don't trust any source more than my own God-given discernment and my ability to parse what I believe to be true from, whatever else is out there. And so I think we need to start an open dialogue on this, and there needs to be a public reckoning to address this perception gap that still exists, where it's like, if you didn't believe in the narrative at any point that, you were just irresponsible, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy nut. It seems like the purity test for a lot of people is you had to have believed at some point that it was all legitimate and that you had this come to Jesus moment, because if you didn't believe, then it sort of challenges or threatens their ego and their sense of self, because it's like, well, why did this person see it and I didn't? So a lot of people need this olive branch to like follow these people who were wrong from the beginning, but their heart was in the right place, right? Like, it was well intentioned and they came around eventually. I don't think that there can be solidarity with these people. Somebody asked me on Twitter, like, what is the deadline for acknowledging the truth? When is it acceptable for somebody to admit that they're wrong? And, I thought about that question because, people have accused me of being like too much of a purist on this, just because of my personal conviction about the disgusting manner in which fascism was able to advance during 2020, the way that people rolled over and bowed down. And I think the answer to that question, when was the deadline? Well, for me, it was anytime before they injected millions of people with an experimental mRNA gene therapy. That was the deadline. That's when you should have spoke up. At the end of 2020, when they had allowed people to go out, politicians and media telling people this is the biggest pandemic in 100 years, but go out and protest George Floyd and have 100,000 people in the street all right next to each other. And it's fine because you're wearing a paper mask, right? So it's fine. Yeah, go out there and racism is really a pandemic. That's a real public health threat. After we saw that for a year, all of these back and forth, wear the mask, don't wear the mask, go protest, do this. By the time we got up to, hey, we're about to forcibly inject a bunch of people with an experimental vaccine, by the time we got there, it should have been a hard line for everybody. Nah, I'm cool. Y'all doing too much. You doing too much. It was too much of a power grab too quick. And if you didn't see through this, I can't rationally give you the same level of trust and benefit of the doubt as I give to people who stood on 10 toes down on their human and constitutional rights. There's so many people who didn't even have a conspiratorial bias or basis to reject the COVID tyranny. They did it on the basis of constitutional and human rights, and simply because they knew that the math wasn't adding up. People who did the right thing, even when they couldn't fully articulate why it was the right thing. Those are the people that I think we need to be championing as we move forward and we start to ask these important questions about what actually just happened for the past 4 years. Why did they actually just put us through what we just went through, and what we might be facing as we go into this next election year, and whatever tricks might come along with that. Because again, you have to be careful of who you're sort of trying to build with and who you're extending this compassion to, because the next thing you know, those people will be the same ones throwing you under the bus, because the government and the media and their job and all of these social pressures are telling them that you're crazy. Put them in camps. They're crazy. They won't take the next injection. Let's social credit score. Let's start bringing that in. These people are going to comply because they already showed you that's the type of person they are. I'm sure that there are a few of y'all. I'm sure there's a few people that did learn a lesson during this. And, I'm sorry if what I'm saying upsets you. I really am. But as somebody who lost a lot, like I said, there and speaking in solidarity with people who also lost things, because I'm not the only one, I just don't trust you. I really don't. So that's about all I had to say on this. I think, and yeah, I'm glad that Brett is being called out for his hypocrisy finally, because I felt like for a long time there I was the only one who remembered that he held these opinions. So I am really grateful that people are waking up and starting to call out the people who sort of helped perpetuate these lies and the stuff that we were being told. This is Foster the Podcast, episode 5. Again, I thank y'all for joining me. I hope you continue to come back. It's, we're having a good time. We're having fun. I know we're talking about a lot of serious subjects, but, it's all in trying to get to the root of the issues and, have honest conversations. So again, appreciate y'all. Leave me a comment, leave me a like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we will catch you on the next one. Peace.